everybody, welcome to my first video of the new YouTube channel. This is going to be on the concept of effort, and I'll be putting up one video each month that talks about one concept from psychology that I think applies to becoming a better drummer and a better drum teacher. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see each one that comes up each month. And like I say, I'll be putting up one a month, so there'll be more coming down the road. First topic though this month is on effort. So how many of you have had the experience where you have a student that seems to have some ability or talent on the drums, and you give them things to work on, but each week they just seem to not make a whole lot of progress, and what seems to be happening is that they don't work towards the lesson each week, but just kind of rely on what they naturally can do behind the drums, and then it just doesn't seem to go anywhere. Now, I know as a teacher myself in many areas of teaching that has happened to me, and it's frustrating because you know that the student has potential, you know that if they work, they could get better and they could actually become a better drummer, but they just don't seem to be putting in the effort behind that. So if that seems like something that's happened to you or is happening to you, this video is to try to help you think about that a little differently, and also try to give you some tips so that you can overcome some of those obstacles. So let's talk about why effort is important first of all. So some areas of psychology have shown that if you give students academic problems to solve, but you focus on two things. One group of students is told that they're very smart and very intelligent and can solve these problems. Another group of students is told, you know, if they work hard or if they put in a lot of effort, they can solve the problems. If you compare those two groups over time, you'll actually see that the group that's talked to about effort and is referred to as working hard, those groups of students tend to persist and do better at those academic problems and situations. This is the work of Dr. Carol Dweck, and she's shown in many different samples of students that the hard work and the effort usually beats the talent. And like I say, it's across many different types of situations and different types of problems. And I'd like to offer that as a concept to think about when you're learning drums. And it's this idea of growth mindset, that we don't come into the world with a fixed amount of ability or talent. I'm not just intelligent in one way and can never change that intelligence. I don't have skills that can never be improved upon. If you do think about it that way, you look at things in a fixed mindset. What we're trying to focus in on is growth mindset, which is you can put in a lot of effort and practice to change the situation that you're in. I don't know a lot of people that are naturally born to play drums. They don't have natural rhythm necessarily. They don't have natural timekeeping ability. They may not be a natural jazz drummer, but with that practice and effort, those things can develop. But you still hear even today students that don't believe that they can play certain styles of music because they're not good at it, or they can't really keep time because they don't have a natural ability to do that. Those are all things that can be dismantled and basically shown to be not true if you practice and you put in effort. And later in the video, I'll give you specific ways that can be done. So the next concept is the idea that effort involves, doing things, and in drumming, it's a very motor-based pattern. We're moving our arms and our legs to play this instrument. And some interesting research from neuroscience shows that motor patterns actually change the way the brain functions. So a group of mice that ran in a wheel over a period of time actually changed the way that their brain functioned, and that was that they increased the white matter, or the myelination that was between their brain cells. White matter is actually insulation. It's fat that insulates the axons of our brain cells, and it allows the signal between the brain cells to communicate faster. If a mouse can actually perform a motor pattern and change the way its brain is functioning, just think what we can do as humans. So when you perform drums and are playing and practicing, you have to be doing motor patterns, and that's why focusing on effort is the better strategy, because you actually are telling people to do things and actually put in the motor patterns so that the signals that they're sending from their muscles actually can go about changing that white matter in their brain. Focusing on doing those motor skills may seem kind of boring, because maybe the motor skills are just the rudiments or just basic sticking patterns. But if your mindset is, well, those sticking patterns and those rudiments are actually sending signals to my brain that can change the way the white matter is produced in my brain, that gives you a whole new perspective about how some of that practice might be going. So think about how some of those concepts can be applied. Growth mindset for one, and this idea that motor skills and patterns are actually changing the way our brain cells function. Those are two kind of really recent and important areas of psychology that I think has a direct application to improving drumming. So let's talk now about how you can do that a little bit more specifically. And I'm going to break this down into two parts. One is for students directly, and then the other part is for drum teachers. So for students, focusing on effort means you have to think about your practice routine. And practice should not be just coming down to the drum set and playing beats and songs that you already know very well. I mean, if that is your practice routine, you come down and you play for 30 minutes on things like that, you're probably not truly practicing. And again, I would think about listening to Benny Greb, a phenomenal drummer that's out there right now. He talks about some of those concepts and how he had to change his mindset about his own practice to work on more challenging things. So practice should really be about working on things that you're not good at yet. It's very difficult. There are things that you don't have down. Most of the practice that you spend, most of the time in that practice should be on those concepts. So define what your practice is, first of all, and make sure you're working on things that are difficult and not completely known to you at that time. Next thing is to set up a routine. You really do need to come up with a routine that works for you in your practice. And it doesn't have to be this way for everybody. I tend to break my practice up into 3 segments. The first segment is working on like the practice pad, warming up, working on rudiments. And I'll spend about 15 or 20 minutes as part of my practice with that starting point. The next segment of practice to me is to get behind the kit and actually work on either beats or rhythms that I don't know yet, or maybe songs that I haven't fully got down, maybe transitions of songs that I don't know, and spend time behind the drum kit as the second part of practice. And then the final third part of practice is applying these concepts musically. So everything that we do behind this kit should be focused on making music. Beats, rudiments should not just be played in isolation, but try to make them part of a musical context if you're learning. So that means, maybe playing to your favorite song, playing a beat that you don't know, but playing it into a song context. There's a lot of apps out there. I'll give you a reference to one. Drum Tracks has drumless tracks to it. It has music from many different styles, but you can play along and add your own drum beats to it, and that's really a good way to practice a musicality piece to your routine. It might just be even if you're just doing rudiments, you can play those musically. Those can be applied in a musical context. You can make solos out of them. There's solos out there that you can get, so you can play those in a more cohesive context rather than just the sticking patterns and everything in isolation of itself. You're actually making music. It's a huge concept that I think students need to appreciate more, and if you're a drum teacher, I think focusing on that more is a good idea. Okay, the next thing for a student would be to focus on the actual time that you're spending and the quality of that time. So part of our issue, I think, with putting in effort is that we're distracted a lot during our practice time. Limit social media, limit the amount of distractions that you have during the time that you have. If you only have 30 minutes to practice and you're spending a chunk of that on social media, you're really not getting that much out of your practice routine. There was a study done that showed if students were told to pay attention to a 50-minute lecture, but they had access to all their social media. They had access to their Facebook, and their Twitter accounts and so forth. If they were tested later, it showed that they only paid attention for about 6 minutes of that 50-minute lecture. So really the bulk of the time is wasted if we have distractions. We really truly can't multitask very well. We just divide our attention across things if we're doing it. To get really good at something, you have to be extremely focused for the time that you have to practice, especially if it's limited and you can't practice a whole lot. Make the most of it. Make the most of that time so that there isn't things that are pulling you away from it. Okay, now for drum teachers, what can you do to help your students out to put more effort in? I think, certainly you should always encourage your students with concepts of, you need to work hard, you need to put in the effort. And those kind of statements focus on growth mindset, and those are important. But I think you have to go beyond just telling students to work hard. You have to come up with specific lessons, and you have to come up with specific practice routines for them, because they're looking to you to put the effort in. How would you do it? And just simply telling them how to do it isn't probably enough. We need to get it better at actually devising ways to help them. So one thing that I do that I like is I create these grids for students during practice. And you can take like a rudiment, like the example I give in the lesson is a single paradiddle. So that if they learn the single paradiddle, let them work on it at different tempos. So 60, 90, and 120 beats per minute. Make sure they can play the single paradiddle at least once or twice that way. And then each lesson should increase that. So now if they have the paradiddle down, they should be able to do it for 2 measures, and maybe they can do it now for 1 minute and maybe 2 minutes. And you can go as long as you think is necessary, so that each week the student is challenged with a new idea. In other words, it's not just that they got the paradiddle down, but now they have to play the paradiddle correctly over a period of time. That's a good way to build an effort, and in my PDF I can send you, it shows you the grid that you can create, and the grid's really good because you can check it off as the teacher. You can see if they're actually performing it and observe it, and then they can see if they're making progress, but you can actually show them that if they keep putting in effort, that they're getting to where they need to go over time. And something visual like that is really important to see the progress. Another thing I like to do is to increase the challenge of learning some of the concepts. So like, for example, with rudiments, it's not just getting the sticking patterns down, but challenge your students to play it in different tempos. Challenge the student to play it with different dynamic levels. So can they play it in a soft context, in a medium context, in a loud context? Because a lot of times drummers don't work on their dynamics enough, and so they just play it at one dynamic level. So each week you can challenge them to play those rudiments or those patterns with different levels. That creates a nice way to focus on effort. And accents are another great thing. The single stroke roll, the double stroke, paradiddles, for example, all those, you can put those accents in different parts of the roll. And each week the student has to actually come back with a new way of playing that single rudiment, and that can go on for a long time. That's another good exercise, is to wrap all of those little rudiments and sticking patterns around either dynamics, tempos, or accents, and you could really increase the effort level that they have to do over time. So that's something that I like to do with students, and it's something that's improved my drumming as well. So the last thing for drum teachers is this concept of a drum tree. I would say this is really useful for students that are younger. If you're teaching students that are maybe elementary level, very beginner-based students, maybe some of the intermediate students that are younger. And that's this idea of a drum tree. In the packet, I've created this visual of a tree. And what you can do as the teacher is every time the student learns a rudiment, let's say the single stroke roll, double stroke roll, paradiddle, you can put those rudiments on the ground. That goes in the soil, and that's the foundation of your drumming. Then once students start to learn beats and rhythms, you can make those the branches of the tree. So let's say they learn rock, and they learn some jazz, and maybe they learn blues. Put those as actual branches, and you can subdivide those. You can get as complicated as you want there. But basically it enhances and reinforces a growth mindset. and that is that nothing is fixed. Your drumming skills are not fixed. You can you can start with a good foundation, and then your tree grows literally as you learn more and more pieces. I like to do that because, again, it shows the student that I'm tracking their progress. It shows them that I'm interested in them getting better. I'm also showing them that it's endless, that they can keep improving and getting better. And it's also good for you as a drum teacher to tell your parents that the child is learning, that they're actually getting something out of the lessons. It's been worth the money that they're investing, and that's a really good thing to show the parents, because it creates a good rapport and a good communication between you and the parent. So in my PDF packet, there's sort of an image of a growth tree, drum tree that you can use. It's totally up to you to how you can apply it, and you can modify it in many ways. So hopefully that'll create a template for you to build upon. Okay, so today we talked about effort, and I gave you some specific ways that you can increase the effort as a student and as a teacher of the drums. So focus on growth mindset, focus on motor patterns. Even the simplest motor patterns that seem pretty boring are actually really important, because they are literally changing how the brain functions. If you're born with a lot of talent behind the drum set, I would just say put in as much effort as you can, because if you have the talent and you put in hard work, those two things are really the most unstoppable combination that you can have. But if you're like me and like a lot of other students, you just didn't have a lot of talent, you weren't naturally born to play, you can overcome so much of that by how you think about your approach and how you practice. And so I tried to show you today that there's a lot of things that you can change in terms of how you think, and the things that you actually practice that can get you to be a great drummer, and even maybe become a professional drummer, even though you weren't born with a lot of talent behind it. Those things can be worked on. What I like to do is say, please contact me. Try to put these ideas into practice during the month. There's only one video that I put up a month, because I really think it's enough information to, if you really focus on it, it's enough information to work on for the entire month. I'd love to hear how you go about that. So if you're a student or a teacher out there, please contact me. I'll provide my email on the screen there, and it's also in the video description. Reach out to me, and I'd be happy to help you think about this stuff more. Again, if you want a free PDF packet, it has sort of the review of the lesson today, so you don't have to always go back to the video. I provide some of the video links and some of the lesson tips that I've gone over. I can send you a link for a PDF file. Just send me an email, and I'd be happy to get that sent to you. So I just hope that today you got some good information and that you can put it into practice. There'll be another video next month that'll talk about another concept in psychology and how you can apply that one thing to becoming a better drummer. So thank you so much for watching this video today, and we'll see you back here next month.